Gentlemen, can I interrupt your conversations? We'll have a break later and you can stay as long as you want after. So, but now it's time to start our formal meeting this morning. So, and it's my job to welcome each of you here. A special welcome to our guests this morning. We'll have time a little bit later on for people that can introduce their guests. But we're always welcome extra faces here, and it's a nice turnout this morning. So special welcome to you, and then of course to all of our members for our monthly meeting. For the guests and the very new members, the fact that I wasn't here last month either, my name is Murray Gingrich, and I am the club president. So it's nice to be back and to welcome you this morning. To begin with, Peter, are you ready? We're going to sing "O Canada" and our Probus song. So if you're able to, would you please stand? And we'll do that now. Patience. Okay. This is the time for us, the perfect time for us, for fellowship with friends we know. This is the place for us, the perfect place for us, to share a laugh, to learn, to grow. We're very glad you came to join us, to bring a smile and say hello. This is the time for us, a special day for us. This is our Brampton Probus Club. All right. Better than some renditions, so congratulations, gentlemen, our Probus song here. It's the thought that counts, not the matter that we can, or not important that we carry the melody, really. So this morning, timing is excellent.
Yeah.
Welcome, Bob England. Been a while. Okay, it's a special day for Bob England to be back with us after last joining us, I think in September, I believe. So it's especially appreciated to see you out, and I know it's going to be a treat for you. So thanks, Jack, for making it all possible. This morning, going to have Steve Hughes introduce our speaker. Now, just before we do that, I want to put the other people that are thinking of joining or about to join, put their fears to rest, that you don't need to speak to a meeting as our speaker before you're allowed to be inducted into our club. Just the way it works, though. John has offered to speak to us this morning. And as an experienced speaker, we took him up on that offer. So Steve, would you take a minute to introduce him, please?
Thanks, Murray. You did just steal a couple of my lines here this morning, but can you hear me okay? Closer? Closer, yeah. We've got a speaker here this morning that I've been friends with for a very long time, 30 or 35 years. We can't figure out quite how big that gap is, but we played baseball together when we were young and able to throw a ball. John's got a wicked arm throwing from third base. That was his strength. He could really move that ball across the diamond. So anyways, but John is here to speak to us about something other than that. He has had an interesting work career, and he's not going to talk about that. He's going to talk about the difficulties that we have with the information that is fed to us, forced upon us, if that's a term he might use, and how it could impact on our lives. So Jack has gone over to talk to John. I'm not sure why. I'm gonna just diverge ever so slightly, because do you know that Jack Murphy has been taking Bob England into various events, and we're glad to see Bob. But we should also think about what Jack has been doing and congratulate him. Don't clap. You don't even hear it. He's talking to John. I think they're doing something technical. Yeah. We can hear you, John. Oh, yeah. Okay, so don't say anything rude. So anyways, I hope you'll enjoy John and his presentation. It's an interesting one. John Halloran.
Well, good morning. Is this on? Can you hear me? No,
I don't think so.
okay, I'll just try not to electrocute myself. Okay.
There you go.
How's that?
That's better.
Hey, so now I can wander around.
Lights.
Lights.
I've never had a soundboard before, so that's pretty cool. So thank you for the privilege today to present my thoughts on critical thinking. It's derived from a lifelong love of history, music, reading, and politics. And I hope you find the next 40 minutes interesting. And if you have something that interests you or you want to follow up, I have some references which we'll talk about at the end of the talk. There'll be some time for questions. And so let's just get started. When you reflect on the events that you've witnessed through your life, are you confident you understand what went on? How about now? Do you know what's going on? My whole life, I heard people ask the question, what's going on? Marvin Gaye asked. Country Joe said, 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Stop, hey, what's that sound? Was originally about a coffee shop, but it came about something much more. But I didn't ask, I just enjoyed the music because I knew what was going on, because I followed the news. So why wasn't it until I was in my 60s that maybe I didn't know what was going on? When Lisa Perry in that crazy hat sang and prayed for a revolution, John Prine had the answer. Blow up your TV, throw away your paper. Don Henley sang about that tired old man elected king. And Billy Joel said, hey, we didn't start the fire. And Rod Stewart, well, just never mind. So what woke me up and how did I respond? And what did I learn and where did I learn it? That's what I want to share with you today. So who was it that inspired me? No, it wasn't him, but he asked a question early on in the Civil War. His team was off to a bad start, and he replaced his generals with his man McClellan. And when McClellan failed, he replaced him with General Grant and won the war. And Abraham Lincoln had great quotes. A house divided will not stand. But he's not the only historical figure that figured out what was going on. In 1867, John A. Macdonald figured out his issue, and he brought in confederation with one of his enemies, Joseph Howe. And John A., like Abraham Lincoln, had great quotes. When he recoiled in horror that he had to pick his government from only people that were elected, he said, "Give me better wood, I'll make a better cabinet." So, but John A. would endorse a very little known quote of Abraham Lincoln's, and it's relevant to my topic today, and it goes something like this. So that's good advice, but what is the lesson? So, well, what does that mean? We both realize that when information surfaces, you need to know where the source was. But it's more than that. Let me illustrate with your participation in a small exercise. Does anybody want to guess what that is? It's a person wearing a sombrero, riding a bicycle. So with this perspective, can anybody tell me what this is?
It's two people, right?
Excellent. We have a lot of intelligent people here. That's great. So can you identify now what this next image is? Well, before somebody knows, it's a bear climbing a tree. And so something can be staring you right in the face in plain view, but without perspective, you're not going to see it. So knowing perspective and context is just as important as knowing who provides information. So why did it take me so long to learn this lesson? I grew up in Oshawa. These are some of my early influences. Stay-at-home mom, auto worker dad. They always read the paper. Globe and Mail in the morning, Oshawa Times, and the Toronto Star later in the day. TV and magazines told us what went on. We had a big cabinet television in which Walter Cronkite told us about the Vietnam War and the space race. And TV dominated. It brought into our home an event which had a massive impact on me. As you can see, I was only 8. We were sent home from school. I recall one evening with the Toronto Star open to a full picture of JFK under the kitchen counter light, my mom slowly shaking her head back and forth. Television had it all. And in the 70s, I developed my own media interests. On Thursday nights, CBC had Monty Python after the late news. Earlier, CTV had Here Come the 70s. Their first episode was Communication in the Wired World. Imagine that. Doonesbury, Saturday Night Live, and National Lampoon. My sources did not align with those of my parents. In March break 1973, some high school buddies and I drove to Florida during the energy crisis. We sat by a campsite fire and talked to Americans about Watergate. And I can remember this very refined older lady saying, "Our president will be fine." I rushed home each day after school and watched Sam Ervin in the Watergate hearings. By the Reagan era, for me, it was work, then family. I had less time to watch the news. I continued to read my humor-based sources. They had a different narrative. I got interested in Iran-Contra and Watergate. I didn't understand either one. November 92, my work was having a major installation done by technicians from the southern US. And they were sitting around and one said to me about the newly elected Bill Clinton, wait until you see this guy. We call him Slick Willie. I'd begun to read about the political players to get a better understanding of the narratives that were implied by Rolling Stone and Doonesbury. What better way to learn than direct from the primary players? Iran-Contra and Whitewater were explained in some of these books, but I still didn't understand either one. But I did notice a trend. These books all had a similar formula. Explanations why things were as they were. And I was thinking critically and I was going to the source, but I still didn't understand Iran-Contra. So let's turn to Winston Churchill for guidance to understand why I remain confused. Now, there's no evidence Winston Churchill ever said this. In fact, nobody knows who said it, but we're going to go with it anyway. It's relevant. If you rely on a single source to learn about a topic, you only get one point of view. Meet Carol Tavris. She's a social psychologist who writes extensively on cognitive dissonance and critical thinking. And she weighs in on Winston Churchill's alleged words as follows. She makes a valid point. If you want to truly understand a topic or an event, you need to hear from all sides. I did not appreciate this point back in August 1990 as the first Gulf War loomed. We had friends visiting us from the UK, and we sat in our family room as the news reported that the Bush administration said there were 250,000 Iraqi troops on the Saudi border. Knowlton Nash told us how Iraqi soldiers pulled babies from incubators and left them on the floor to die. That's terrible, we thought. We never questioned that. It didn't occur to us to question. We now know that both reports were false. The incubator story was from the 15-year-old daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to the US. She was part of a government-linked PR firm's campaign to move public opinion in favor of military intervention in the Persian Gulf. Reporters found satellite images where the Iraqi troops were reported and found nothing, just sand. How I got my information changed with the Gulf War. It was all CNN. Boy, was I all in. I had a young family, working, traveling, get the kids to bed, check out CNN before we crash. The first Gulf War, General Schwarzkopf was the media star. The second Gulf War gave us Mohammed Zahid al-Sahaf, the Iraqi information minister, better known as Baghdad Bob. And that guy, like John A. and Abraham Lincoln, had amazing quotes, and I have a couple of clips in the references. CNN talking heads explained each crisis. I listened, I believed. Then two new windows of information opened up. YouTube was born in 2005, and I had a friend of mine that gave me some very different books. I kept an open mind, always aware of alternative views. Then I came across a video by Francis Richard Conley, who's an English historian and a writer. His point was, many North Americans are not aware of their past, and they need to wake up to the fact that history has not unfolded as told to them. Wow. It was it's a bear climbing a tree moment. It countered what I was told, what I believed. The specifics of the video are not important. My purpose is to share my response. I had to learn some basic history before I could explore these new concepts. I had closed other knowledge gaps, so I had a process. So where to start? I put Connolly's video content in a binder for a baseline and chose some topics to explore. I learned about any audience or video originator that I used, and I followed up on key people that they mentioned or their references. Gave me multiple touch points to develop my own perspective. I started with the Rothschilds. Mayor Rothschild was a critical thinker. He managed the finances of William, the first elector of Hesse, and built a fortune with bonds and lending money to European governments. He set up his 5 sons as independent bankers in European capitals. He made it their business to know what was going on. Great courier system connected to the monarchies, but still independent. They realized that information was power. They financed wars, often on both sides, and Nathan's famous quote, "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws." I learned about fiat money, money not backed by gold or silver. Next up, mining magnate. British imperialist who wanted to bring the US back into the British Empire. Cecil Rhodes founded a clandestine group that influenced UK policy through the turn of the century. Group had many names. The Round Table is the most common. The guy had multiple wills. He established Rhodes scholarships in 1903, and his family or his estate still funds to this day. Notable Rhodes scholars include Bill Clinton, Rex Murphy, Bob Ray, and Chrystia Freeland. By the way, Bill Clinton never graduated, and it's always fun to find out why. Meet Carroll Quigley, an American historian with his own view of the early 20th century. He wrote at some peril about those in power, and he's required reading if you're interested in this era. Meet James Corbett of the Corbett Report, expat Canadian living in Japan, who I found to be an excellent source on the early 1900s, an era which I knew very little about. Robber barons, political manipulators, British upper class, operating in plain sight, they set conditions for our current world. And we need to know about them because their methods prevail. They knew what went on because they engineered events. J.D. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan, for example, they were to finance what Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton are to Formula One. They configured the banking system to their advantage. Via their acolytes, they engineered the bank revisions, which led to the birth of the US Federal Reserve, a private company which heavily influences the US economy. Colonel House was a Texan whose father was a London banker. I mean, the guy wasn't even a colonel. And he's the era's version of Jared Kushner. The guy was everywhere, but what exactly did he do? Well, he got Woodrow Wilson elected on behalf of those that plucked him from academia, first as the governor of New Jersey, and then the president who signed the US Federal Reserve Act into law in 1913. In the turn of the century in the UK, it was all Alfred Milner. He was the UK's Wayne Gretzky of political influence. Like Gretzky operating behind the net, Milner, on behalf of the Round Table, orchestrated events in the political arena. He heavily influenced UK policy, the benefit of the Round Table interest through to the 1920s. His mentor was W.T. Stead, the first to recognize that journalism, rather than just report the news in the form of a tabloid, influenced public opinion. Both were part of the Rhodes original Round Table. Then we have the Dulles brothers at the 1919 Paris Peace Conference. They were heavily immersed in the transition from robber baron era to the start of the Cold War. This slide gives a peek at this transition, and it's the genesis of key events I witnessed growing up. The focus is on 3 prominent families of the American elite. Oilman J.D. Rockefeller and his brother, who owned a steel foundry that made locomotive parts for railroad men E.H. Harriman. Master mechanic Samuel Bush was a general manager of Frank Rockefeller's steel foundry and eventually ran his company. Three connected families, each with a legacy. J.D. Rockefeller Jr. had 5 sons. David, the youngest, was a banker. He set up the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberger Group, which I will reference. Nelson was the governor of New York and vice president under Gerald Ford. The Rockefeller Foundation continues positioned as a philanthropic organization. E.H. Harriman had a son, Averell Harriman. He set up a banking business in 1931. He was a U.S. diplomat under 5 administrations and interacted directly with Stalin and Churchill and advised presidents up until LBJ. Their legacy can be found on Wall Street. Samuel Bush had a son, Prescott, and their legacy was a political one. The Bushes were embedded with the Harrimans and the Rockefellers. Prescott was the son-in-law of the president of Averell Harriman's bank. He ends up managing the Union Banking Company, which he co-founded with Averell Harriman. Turns out that the Union Banking Company held accounts for Fritz Thyssen, who financed Adolf Hitler. This was problematic. World War II breaks out, 1942, and Bush is charged with trading under the Enemies Act, and the UBC assets are frozen. But there were a lot of US companies invested in Germany before US entered the war. They were represented by the law firm Sullivan and Cromwell, who kept Prescott Bush out of jail. So who were the partners in Sullivan and Cromwell? Well, the Dulles brothers, who navigated in the same circles as US diplomat Averell Harriman. John Foster was Secretary of State in 1953 until his death in 1959. His younger brother Alan was CIA director for 3 presidents. The brothers were incredibly popular in their day. Many now look back upon them as Satan and Lucifer. We now know about the symbiosis between intelligence and organized crime, which was formed in World War II and began an unbroken chain, which led directly to Robert Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. And above this transitional period hovered an invisible entity. A think tank is defined as a body of experts who provide advice on political and economic problems. Here are 4 from this period. One in the UK and sister in the US. One in Europe and North America, and one for Europe, North America, and Japan. The UK version arose from a meeting of UK and US delegates to the 1919 Paris Peace Conference. That was arranged by Lionel Curtis, a strong federalist who believed in world government, had close ties to Cecil Rhodes' Round Table, secretive by design, pulling strings unseen by the subject, and you can see their influence in the sister organization in the US. Lionel Curtis and Colonel House were involved, as were bankers, politicians, media, journalists such as Walter Lippmann, an American writer and a commentator said by some to have been the most influential journalist of the 20th century. His views show how CFR members saw themselves. The Bilderberger Group came in 1954, and it's my favorite lineup of originators. Gathered by Joseph Rettinger, David Rockefeller, and Dennis Healy, another unelected group operating under the public radar. Joseph Rettinger was a Polish James Bond. In 1944, at the age of 56, the guy parachutes into occupied Poland. He was funded by a Polish count, and he studied at the Sorbonne, where he circulated in Paris intellectual circles and came under the influence of an English polo player who was also a strong world government federalist. and the lover of perfume goddess Coco Chanel, dubiously affiliated with the Nazi occupiers. Prince Bernhard was a German noble RAF pilot, and he married into the Dutch royal family and became the consort of Queen Juliana, who he met at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Paul Rikens was the president of Unilever, and General Walter Bedell Smith was U.S. Director of Central Intelligence, who handed the reins over to Alan Dulles. But the best guy, my favorite guy, was General Doug Jackson. He was World War II government propagandist and department chief of psychological warfare. And he was the publisher of Life magazine, the magazine my parents and I read to find out what was going on. This is a group united to influence Western foreign policy for North America and Europe. The Trilateral Commission was formed in 1973. It was founded by Zbigniew Brzezinski, also known as Zbig, and David Rockefeller. Zbig had a unique view of the world that aligned with David Rockefeller's interests. In 1974, Zbig selects Georgia Governor Jimmy Carter as a member, and David Rockefeller backs him for president, provided he supports Zbig as his national security advisor, which he does when elected in 1976. The Trilateral Commission is seen as secretive, no published minutes, and by invitation only. So with the table set, let's examine some of the significant events that I learned about. A live radio play caused some to believe that the Martians had attacked. What's interesting is it caught the attention of Joseph Stalin and US intelligence because it saw how the media can control the population. Organized crime marries up with US intelligence when a troop ship sinks in New York Harbor. The Office of Naval Intelligence reaches out to the New York crime families who control the ports to find out who. Their crime boss was in prison doing 30+ years for racketeering, so Mayor Lansky does a deal on behalf of Lucky Luciano. And for cooperation, his sentence is commuted, provided he agrees to be deported to Italy. He pops up in Cuba, where organized crime has huge gambling investments. Fidel Castro seizes power in Cuba and nationalizes gambling and oil revenues, and he tosses a few crime bosses into jail. All of a sudden, the CIA and organized crime and US oil have a common enemy. The CIA planned invasion of Cuba to depose Castro is a big fail. JFK fires CIA Director Alan Dulles and his deputy, whose brother happens to be the mayor of Dallas when JFK was assassinated. So US intelligence is running rampant. Hey, let's give Castro exploding cigars. Hey, let's do a terror campaign and bomb US civilian targets and blame Cuba. RFK rejected that one, and you can find the memo online, and it's in my notes. Some of the media were complicit. They covered CIA actions in a favorable way and helped them shape the public narrative. The US hid the truth about the Vietnam War. So some elected members started to say, gee, what's going on? 3 committees investigated, and what did the public learn? Well, unwitting citizens were drugged in mind control experiments, some which were carried out at Montreal's McGill University under MKUltra. The government spied on political, civil rights, and unions and organizations. And the CIA had a program of covert assassination of foreign leaders. There was quite a big public stink. Permanent oversight on intelligence was developed, and new boundaries were set for the CIA. Jimmy Carter tried to clean it up, but intelligence just went rogue and waited for Ronald Reagan to come in when we have Iran-Contra, where the CIA worked around these new guidelines, these new boundaries. Cartel drugs were flown into MENA by pilots like Barry Seal, Tom Cruise portrays in the movie American Made. Incidentally, the original title of that movie was to be Mina, but that was nixed by presidential candidate Hillary Clinton to distance herself from her time in Arkansas when her husband Bill was the governor during Iran-Contra. Little Rock, Arkansas became a major drug laundering hub where the corrupt bank BCCI first made landfall in the US. Mara Leverett has written on this period in Arkansas. In her book, Boys on the Tracks, describes two victims of these activities, and it's the most popular book that I lend out. So now let's look at think tank influence. UK's Chatham House website shows the membership categories. You can form your own conclusions who influences this entity. At the CFR, there are many people that I listened to growing up and familiar to any boomer. At the moving on to Bilderberg and to the Trilateral Commission, we still see more of the same faces, but there's a notable contingent from Canada at both. So how exactly do these think tanks work? Each has a mission statement, an organization structure, and an agenda. The Bilderberg Group is the most secret. The Trilateral Commission is usually under the radar. Chatham House and the CFR are out there promoting their agenda. Next time you see a talking head on cable news telling about the world, look for these affiliations. And when I saw many of these people growing up, I didn't know that Niall Ferguson or Pierre Trudeau or Peter Mansbridge or Jason Kennedy, or even a guy that I had to report to twice a year in the corporate world, Hugh Siegel, were Bilderbergers, or Barbara Walters or Dan Rather were CFR members. And there's two types of individuals, those who influence and those who are influenced, who drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak. And these two guys are incorrectly attributed to a term which describes any majority who unconditionally drinks the leader's Kool-Aid. Now, there's no evidence either icon used this definition, but it aptly describes the majority of those who informed my parents and I as I grew up, and most of the faces pictured here. Canada has 28 think tanks, the US has over 200, the UK has about 160, and the rest of the world around 290. These are not as well hidden as the big four once were. But there's another layer of influence that's relevant to us, and it's in the United States. Because of its close proximity and its influence on world affairs, it influences our economy, and our life in general. Members of the US Congress have to contend with political action committees. They exert the collective influence of individual Americans. No limits on contributions or spending, but corporations and unions were excluded until 2010. That's when David Keating wins a court challenge, which declares it's unconstitutional to prohibit corporations and unions from spending to promote a candidate or contribute to a political action committee. Super PACs are born, and unions and corporations can now contribute. In the US 2020 election cycle, there were 1,900 super PACs registered with regulators. Companies, business sectors, politicians can indirectly support candidates, but not directly in concert with a candidate. What does that mean? The result is obvious. A super PAC can own a candidate. They impact US foreign policy, so they impact us. So now that I've set the landscape, let's go back and look at what did I know when I was growing up. Well, I knew that JFK was killed by a lone wolf unconnected to the CIA, who was murdered 2 days later by another lone wolf unconnected to organized crime because he felt bad for Jackie. The Vietnam War was predicated by an unprovoked attack on a US ship in the Gulf of Tonkin. Oliver North was a patriot, loyal to an administration that was hard on drugs. Whitewater was an unfortunate land investment, and 9/11 was executed by Islamic terrorists who were tied to Iraq, who had weapons of mass destruction. These events were explained to us by talking heads whose affiliation we did not question. In fact, some of them turned out to be the very ones burning down the house. And we fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. Ooh la la. I wish that I knew what I know now when I was younger. Marvin Gaye and Lisa Perry were right to ask what's going on. Why didn't many boomers who followed the nightly news? In 1988, two guys had a theory and they wrote a book about it. They analyzed the very immediate coverage that my parents and I watched to make their point. They say the media manufactures public consent and carries out system-supported propaganda model of self-censorship without coercion. The coercion is invisible. There are 5 filters of editorial bias. 1, because the media is owned by corporations, they present information biased in the owner interests. 2, the media is not viable without advertisers. Information they present must satisfy their advertisers' interest or they lose revenue. 3, you need an ideological threat to justify a bias. The original threat was anti-communism. Then it was war on terror. Then it was misinformation. And now it's hate speech. 4, think tanks, super PACs aggressively promote their interests and attack critics of their agenda. Media will face blowback if they investigate uncomfortable or unsanctioned topics. And 5, the news is expensive. Bureaucracies subsidize the media for privileged access to lower their cost. If the media runs information that's counter to their sources, they will lose access. So the result, the media becomes a mouthpiece for their sources. And Connolly's video caused me to take a look at the media. This is from 2021, and it points out that 6 corporations determine what we watch on television and movie screens. We all have our favorites that we watch for news and entertainment. These people communicate to us within the context of the organizations for which they work. They don't speak to us in isolation. These are the faces behind those who we watch, the keepers of the 5 filters, now likely out of date. Most have masters, some are the master. But there's boundaries within which those who inform us and entertain us must operate. You have media which leans either left or right. In early 2020, President Trump blames China for the coronavirus, and a Republican senator insists it's plausible that the virus may have come from a lab. The left media calls a lab leak fringe, ridicules anyone raising any question. Then it's game on, and the pandemic becomes left versus right. In June 2021, Jon Stewart guested on Stephen Colbert, and the boundaries from the 5 filters are laid bare for all to see. The validity of the lab leak is not relevant. What's relevant is that Jon Stewart spoke about it on CBS. The reaction of Colbert and his audience is telling, because all know the topic is out of bounds on CBS, where Colbert nightly ridicules such right-wing views. Watch the video link in my references, and you can see the uncomfortable body language and the audience reaction. So what about the new media? There's faces and organizations behind these platforms where the independents speak. Independents label traditional TV and print as mainstream, who counter, well, independents, well, they're conspiracy theorists. Now the media mix offers traditional and new platforms from us to choose. Here's a mix that I'm aware of. I follow a few. All have a bias, which I try to identify before I listen or read. The filters on the traditional media are subtle and they're effective because they're not aware of them, because alternative views get through. Although rarely, as that rarely occurs, as with Jon Stewart's on CBS as an exception. So what about the filters on the new platforms? They too are deciding what information we are able to see or hear. These individuals have all been censored, includes Jon Stewart after his rant on Colbert. Censorship ranges from inconvenience to loss of revenue to canceling, or several have had their entire channels removed from YouTube. Regardless of how odious or virtuous you believe these individuals are, do they not have a right to be heard? Let's invent a quote for context. The filters on the new media are invisible, but they're growing more active. Individual segments can be demonetized to control content. PayPal can suspend an account of a targeted independent. Global and YouTube algorithms bury certain sources, de-emphasize others, or amplify some. The Twitter files showed that these filters are active on social media, and it revealed a new filter. Government-imposed boundaries on social media. Elon Musk gave journalists access to the Twitter archives in December 2022. They found proof of government and intelligence agencies actively influencing narratives on social media. The Twitter files are not well known. They were virtually ignored by the mainstream media. As Matt Taibbi testified, what journalists found on the Twitter files before a US House committee, the IRS went to his house. This guy is an award-winning journalist, wrote for Rolling Stone. The Democrats on the committee called him a so-called journalist. They threatened him with jail and told him to remove his tinfoil hat and respect the FBI. Canada passed the Online Streaming Act, which gives the CRTC power to filter online content to protect Canadians from misinformation. We're not sure how that's going to play out. So this feels no different from when I grew up. You don't want to end up like me, spending 60 years listening to useful idiots and drinking their Kool-Aid. But where to start? It's Alvin Toffler 50 years later, but now it's too many sources vying to get through too short a window. The question Marvin Gaye asked in the 70s and Lisa Perry asked 20 years later and 30 years ago is still relevant. So where do we turn for advice? Well, how about Abe Lincoln? Let's try altering one of his famous quotes, and I would make one important edit. Nobody is right all the time. We want honest effort. If media gets something wrong, we want them to acknowledge it and correct it. But history shows us that's not going to happen. So we have to be skeptical of any information that we consume. This includes from all sources, even the ones we trust. Abe was right, but our John A. McDonald would qualify his advice. If you think critically, you know who provides the information, their bias, and the filters applied to their platform and sources, you can identify who you suspect is honest, information that you suspect to be true. Trust must be earned over time. Well, how? Seek out, understand, and compare other points of view. You can learn something from any source. Do not discount any source. Individuals that we think are heroes can be wrong. Individuals we think are deplorable can be right. Don't discount any source. Listen, seek to understand. Think about the message, not the messenger. And you'll see connections and dishonesty that I didn't see until recently. Apply your own filter and follow the advice of John A. and Abe. Use the tools that they did not have to recognize the filters. Be critical before you decide what you accept. So, what information are you going to trust? Think critically. It's up to you. Thank you very much for listening. I have a Word file that's online if anyone's interested, but these were all the references of the things I can talk about if you wanted to explore or listen to some good music.
Is there any questions of our speaker today? Sure, there's lots.
No, we don't want to listen to this guy.
John invited me. I've known John for 42 years. Went to high school with him, so, but I did not tell him the question I was going to ask. So John, in your considered opinion, who's the most interesting, useful idiot that we might see in the media here in Canada?
How do you choose? There's so many. I learned a valuable lesson. And you really shouldn't comment on this. So I'm not going to reveal my sources, but I used to work at a transportation company in my last job. I used to make jokes about Rob Ford all the time. And the ownership didn't like that. And one morning I opened up the Globe and Mail, and there's a picture at the mayor's conference, and it is Rob Ford and Doug Ford, and right in the middle of those two was my owner, the guy I reported to. So I think there's lots of them everywhere, Brian. And I think the thing too is even people that you respect and trust are going to make a mistake. And where you can assess their character is they admit it and they own up to it. And that's what I look for. See, I got around that pretty good, eh?
Yes, I like the beginning there because it's part of what I use when I'm hearing something. There's so many of these podcasts and internet guys that are there, just unbelievable the number of followers they have. And some of it is just taking you on a merry ride to conspiracies, theories, and QAnon at the end, I guess. But like your first slide there about what is this? And that's how a lot of these people, and I use this all the time, what is it that they are giving you is just a little snippet of the truth. There's something in there that you have heard, know, believe, and then it's the famous words, well, if you believe that, then this is quite possible. And you're on your way to some crazy theory that they're supposedly proving to you. And sometimes it's, well, if you believe this, then this must be true. The other things are, this has been proven, and because of that, I believe this is what it should be. And those words get you started. For a lot of people, when they're convinced of something, which is like a Donald Trump story, it's okay, I'm never going to believe anything else. Even if you prove me, I'm not going to change my mind because you're insulting what my deep beliefs are. Hitler used it. keep repeating the story, they'll eventually believe it, or most will. And once you get the majority going in there, it's a big downhill slide. And unfortunately, in North America, it's becoming more and more obvious. That's what's happening to us. Internet's great, but my biggest joke is when somebody tells me something, oh, it's on the internet, it must be true.
Yeah,
And it's
there
the
was,
exact
sorry.
opposite.
There was an interesting, couple of years ago during the pandemic, whatever, you hear these people say, well, you can't do your own research. Sure you can. And when somebody tells you something, you don't believe it, but it's not as difficult as you may think to go check when someone says, well, so-and-so said this, or so-and-so said this. Over time, multiple sources, it's not as difficult to come to your own conclusion, and you're allowed to come to your own conclusion. You're allowed to believe what you believe. And if you look at how the CIA and all these guys operate, there's all kinds of ways to manipulate people, and you're gonna find that on the internet. You're gonna find that in mainstream media as well. You're gonna find that everywhere, except Probus.
So as a parent, I found that out of sight, out of mind worked really well. So it would seem that one of the simplest solutions to all of this is rewriting history.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about who rewrites history, I think the answer is everybody. You go back and even you read about Middle Ages and say, oh, well, this chronicle guy, he didn't like this, and so everybody rewrites, revises history. So look, really appreciate the opportunity here, and thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, before you go, I'd like to ask you a question. Having listened to you with great interest, I have been on this planet for 91 years, and I'm struggling with it. Well, I'm not struggling. I'm enjoying every minute of it. But I have no idea of all the stuff you presented to us today. I haven't got an idea. I never did. Am I any happier? The less I know, maybe the happier I'll be.
And my response is good for you. Nothing wrong with that. It works.
I think it's, you didn't depress me, but, I'm 86. I came here in 53. What I want to say is, I think it all boils down just to big money, and us as general public owning a house in Bramalea, and Bramalea has changed 100%, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. And just gotta go with the wave. You can't. Even my family say I have to accept it, and I have a big family. But so I'm going to try, but I don't like the way Brampton has changed, but there's nothing I can do about it. Zero.
So no, that's a good observation. And the guy sang a song, accentuates positive. So I mean, I think the focus is find something that motivates you, focus on that. You don't have to worry about all other people and things, and some things you can't change.
Yeah. I think we should all worry about what's happening in Brampton.
Okay, we're gonna have Conte. I've asked Conte to thank her speaker today. So Conte, please. I guess we have one more question. That's the last question, okay? Gotta get on for our
With
tea
the
break.
emergence of artificial intelligence, how will that affect news in the future?
I don't think anybody knows, but I'm scared.
I agree.
Hey, Conte, give Conte a microphone there.
Well, Chief, it's the first time, so please give me a break. And I'll see my Toastmasters speech will practice coming up. Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Great, great. See you. Thanks, John, for coming today. Thank you very much for your speech. Oh, sorry. It was very interesting, very informative. And we are all members of the, thank you very much for coming. Thank you. You're very welcome.
Before we break for coffee. Yes, before we break for coffee, I would just like to take a minute for those people that have guests here today. To introduce their guests if they would, please, so that we can spot those newest people and if you want, you've got an opportunity to sit below that during coffee break time. So who's gonna start off? Okay, John? Yes.
I'd like to introduce my two friends, Rick Sargent, who lives down the street from me, Brian Cotter, who lives down the street from me in Toronto, and who I went to high school with in Oshawa, and I'm really pleased that they're ready to come here.
George, you're next.
Thanks. I just wanted to introduce my friend Terry Hittichuk.
Jerry?
I've known Terry and I am friends for years, visiting us from Montreal.
Okay. Well, next, how do you? And who else has got a guest? I have. Thank you, Jack. I'd like to name Paul Devon. You stand and say hello to Paul, please. Or wave your hand. All right. Paul is a curler that I've got contact with for a number of years, and most welcome to join us this morning. Okay, coffee break, 15 minutes. Enjoy the camaraderie and the coffee, please.
Okay, we need to thank Fred Bennett and for everybody's contribution today. We collected, I gotta add this up now. 90, how much? $94? 96? Anyway, tell you what we did. We had last minute sales and which is always good. So you're gonna get an envelope and some quarters just in case you. So we're gonna have the first draw and I'm looking for somebody to do that and Neil Watson is very close.
530-2516.
516. 516. Oh, look at this. We have a win. Don't throw it back in there. We'll try. Very good, very good. Congratulations. Okay, hang on. I gotta give him some quarters too. There you go. There you go. $24.50. Oh, here we go.
Amazon.
There we go. Okay, where's the picture? Perfect. Okay, now I need you to make a drop. All right. Take one from way down, yeah, yeah, that's the one. Where mine is. That's the one. Okay. Yeah. Okay, next winner is 530-2557. 557. John, same table, same table. I don't know, that happens a lot. That happens a lot. You know, I'd like to see a former president win, means I'm getting closer. There you go, 557? Yeah. You got it. Look at that. Right there. Take that envelope, take that envelope, take this change. Give me your tickets. Okay, that one, that one, that one. Okay, there we go. There we are. There we go. Thank you very much. Yeah, okay, take that, take that.
Sorry, we got a muzzle while I'm here to, our lunch today is at Spot One. So as you know, home of the $10 chicken burger and hamburger. So, love to see you all come out. And, that's it.
All right, our next order of business is to induct our newest members. And to that end, Bill's going to come back. Julio, would you come up, please? And Steve, John, Halloran, you're back. And Steve Hughes is coming up along with John. And of course, our membership director, Jack O'Reilly. So here we are, Jack. Okay. All right.
I'm gonna do two at once here. Julio and John, on behalf of Probus, I'd like to take this moment to welcome you to our club. Very pleased to have you as members, and I'd like to present you with your name tag, which has a red ribbon on it, which I asked that you leave on for a couple of meetings, just to show people that you are new members, and then you can remove the red ribbon. And I'd also like to present you with your Probus lapel pin. And welcome to Probus.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Julio.
Okay, guys, put this way. Julio, put this way. Oh, okay. All right, where are we? Over here. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
I guess that's will serve the purpose. So welcome aboard, gentlemen, and it's much appreciated. Didn't mention, and I'm not, it was right around the last meeting when our longtime member Bob Newsom passed away. So we remembered him in the newsletter, and it's only fair to think one more time about Bob and how much he will be missed. But the other side of that coin is it's certainly a very positive experience to welcome new people into our club. So, and we understand we have a couple of other prospective members out there, so hopefully our numbers are increasing again as we continue to recover from the COVID effect. Okay, I think we'll call on Neil to speak about program right now. What have you got for us, Neil?
Okay, well, next month is our, okay. Well, next month, we don't have a speaker, but we're at the Mary Street Legion for our barbecue. John, do you want to talk about that meeting and our program for that?
Sure. Are you finished?
Yeah, I don't have a speaker for next month, so.
You want to talk now?
Yes, well, sure, come on up front. Here's the mic.
Oh, well, come on up front.
I'll bring the mic to you then. No, oh, we gotta be on camera. Come on up front.
You're making life difficult,
Yeah.
Jack. That's my job.
There's thanks, the floor director there.
Good morning, gentlemen. Okay, I hope you're hungry because we've got our annual July barbecue coming up. If you've all probably seen it in the newsletter. So it's July the 4th. It's going to be at the Mary Street Legion. And we've got a couple of ladies who are going to barbecue for us. And we're going to have sausages, hamburgers, some salad. So standard barbecue fare. There's going to be a number of opportunities to play darts, or I think the one item that I'm interested in and enthusiastic about is horseshoes. So if you are interested in throwing some shoes, let me know. I think Peter has, perhaps a couple of the members have got some horseshoes. And So, do you want to speak to that? Ken?
I've gone to the Kansas Horses Club and we have, I think we have about 24 sets of horses set aside for next month.
Yes.
We have 12 pits. And if we have 24 sets of shoes, we can get about 48 people playing at a time. Now, if you would like to feel the weight of the shoes, I've got a set of shoes today and come up after and take a look at it. These are 2.5 pounds. And now everyone, I presume everyone here would be over 65 and therefore you can throw from 30 feet. The posts are 40 feet apart, but you can throw from 30 feet. So and I think we have enough shoes for all of us, or enough people that want to. So next month.
Thanks, Ken. So, I'll just talk from here. Okay, so if you're interested, let me know. If you're interested for this, and thank you to Ken. We have a deadline out of respect for Mary Street. And so the 27th of June will be the cutoff date for payment for the barbecue. The barbecue is $15. Out of respect for the members, some of the members here, I will take cash or a check. That some of you are nervous about using, the other method of e-transfer. So I respect that. So if you want to pay me or send me a check, that would be great. The deadline is the 27th. And it's out of respect for getting all the appropriate food ready for the barbecue. Any questions? Great, thank you.
Yeah, I got one, the speaker tournament.
Oh, that was canceled, unfortunately. Oh, good question.
$5 back.
Okay, we'll take care of that. See me outside.
Let's just say you don't need to pay for the barbecue, John. Oh.
Yeah, that's, so you got my money, right?
Yeah.
No problem. Thanks for the donation.
All right, and just everybody, it is the 2nd of July, right? The barbecue is always on the first Tuesday of the month, our meeting, so it's July 2nd at Mary Street, but and the idea is that it's going to be a short business meeting at the beginning here. We don't, like I said, we're not having a speaker, and then we're going to play, whether it's horseshoes, darts, whatever that we've got, that you'd like to spend time with your fellow Probians, leading up to then the lunch that we're really looking forward to. It's a new venue for us, highly recommended. So we're hoping, and certainly many of you have been there already. You know, it's a great indoor venue, outdoor venue, and it should be a great day. John.
Open up the Legion so you could go play snooker if you want, because the horseshoes has nothing to do with the Legion. Yes.
That's right.
I've been assured that you have full use of any of the equipment there.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're paying to access everything.
From second. July.
Okay, so anyway, yes, get that money in, whether it's e-transfer, cash, or check to John, so that we can guarantee you a spot. And we keep that, I know a lot of us like to wait to near the deadline or whatever, but remember, John needs the money by the 27th of June to make sure that you've got a meal there. So we look forward to that. All right. Jack, is there anything you wanted to say about membership?
Good morning. Just briefly, as of today, we're up to 89 members, so we're still down from our 135 quota. I have 2 more applications pending, so that'll get our numbers up over the 90. And if we have any guests today who are interested in joining Probus, come and see me, the guy with the blue shirt, and I'll give you an application. The application will be presented at our next executive meeting, and then inductions will take place after that. That's it.
Thanks, Jack. So yes, if those applications are completed, then we'll take care of things and then hopefully induct you then into our July 2nd. Even though it's called a barbecue, we do the business part of that meeting, so we can still induct you there. All right, I think moving along, Elgin, can you talk to us briefly about Walking Club?
Good morning. The Walking Club on the 7th of July, this coming Friday, is in Inglewood. On the 21st of July, we are going to be at Caledon East, where the Trans-Canada Trailway actually starts. And we're going to have lunch. Did I say July? June. Sorry, June 21st and June the 7th, this Friday, we're in Inglewood. June the 21st, we're in Caledon East, and we're followed by lunch at the Villa Caledon Inn right after our walk at approximately noon. Okay, so any of the new members here that are getting inducted, if you're interested, please see me. We'd be happy to have you out. And the new schedule for July to October will be out in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Elgin. Steve, you're next.
Thanks, Mary. I've got 2 things to talk about. One is our book club, and we meet once a month and discuss a book, and it is a great fun. I invite anybody who'd like to join us. Just come and visit for a 1 meeting visit, and you'll enjoy it. So anyways, our next book, our next meeting then is June 17th at 2 o'clock at the Rec Center in Brampton. It's the Central Public Rec. It's a beautiful place for our meeting. Anyways, the name of the book is 8 Days at Yalta, and it's by Diane Preston. There's another book out there called 8 Days at Yalta as well, so don't go for that one. This is a very good book. It tracks the 3 big leaders, Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill, and the negotiations, I guess is the right word, they went through at the end of the Second World War. They knew the war was coming to an end, and they knew they were going to win, and what are they going to do? And they divided Germany into 4 partitions, which went on for quite a long time. And those decisions were very important, and it's a good book about that. So anyways, so if you've got an interest in this, in the history, you want to come and just sit with us for the meeting. You don't have to read the book, and you don't have to come and join the book club, but just come and join this meeting. Listen to the discussion and contribute to it. I bet you there's a lot of people in this room who have lots of knowledge about that sort of stuff, and you're most welcome to come. Any questions on that? Yes.
What's the location?
Central Public School is on Alexander Street. It's that little kind of a funny street close to the downtown, but it's an old school, but it's used as a rec center. And It's got wooden floors. It reminds me of school I went to when I was young, so I was like going in there. Any other questions about the book club? Sure love to see a couple of people come along and just contribute to the discussion. And then I switch hats and talk about golf, and our Probus Golf Club is up and running actively now. We had about 11 guys out on this Monday, which was yesterday. Great day for golf. It's at this is for people who aren't quite sure. It's at Peel Village Golf Course. We have 4 tee-offs starting at 8 o'clock, 8:10, 8:20, and 8:30. Anybody is welcome. Just come along and we'll put you in a group. And it's a friendly group. We played 9 holes and have a drink afterwards, and it's a great day. So, any questions about that? I am finished. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Now, the good news is, you'll notice that Peter Kuipers didn't have any fellowship news to share this morning. And we think that's a good sign, because he's always sharing news about members that probably aren't experiencing the best of times or whatever. So it's, and we can certainly see firsthand this morning how Bob England is doing. So that's taken Peter's news for this morning out of the program. Before we do anything else, though, John Gal has reminded us that this is such a special time. And I'd like John to come forward, please, to remind us what he's thinking of these days and ask us to share on that. John?
I'm going back by the flag. So I'll still be in the picture. Yep. Okay, on June the 6th, 80 years ago, our soldiers were suffering it on the beach. I'm sorry, but I can't control my emotions. I was on Juno Beach a number of years ago, and I went down to see the Canadian House, which is on one end of the beach. And the Canadian flag was flying on the first building that was taken over by Canadians in Europe. And the flag was a terrible flag. It was in terrible shape. It was torn. So what I did was I got a hold of people at the pavilion, and I tried to get a hold of somebody at the house. The house was closed. The person was away on holiday. They looked after barrels. But I found out that the house it's a duplex, and the Canadian side of it was kept by a Frenchman, and he was looking after it at his own expense. I couldn't believe this. This guy was doing this on his own expense. So what I did is I came back to Canada with all the addresses and information about the house, brought it to our Legion and Paul, and now the city of Brampton sends them flags and anything else that they require every year. So they automatically send them 2 flags a year, and if they get response, and if there's anything else they need, and we're looking after it. So when you see the program that's happening on June the 6th on CBC, they will show that house, I'm sure. And the flag you see comes from us in Brampton. Yeah. So on that note, I would like us to just take a moment of silence and think about all those soldiers. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you have. Okay, thanks, John. Before Neil shares our tiny thought for our last stimulation of our meeting here, or whatever, I'd like to take a minute just to ask those people that are having a birthday this month, June. If you've got a June birthday, would you please stand up so that we can just congratulate you on another milestone? June birthdays, where are you? All right. Congratulations. Okay. Neil has a tiny thought to share with us now.
Tiny thought. Most people are brought up believing if they are a good person, good things will happen to them. Well, not entirely wrong. It's not enough to unlock your potential. It's like walking up to a door with two locks and only one key. If you want to go inside, you need the other key. The second key is going positive and going first. Proactivity, helping others. When both keys are used together, the doors unlock and previously hidden world of opportunities reveal itself.
Thanks, Neil. Okay, is there any other new business that anybody wishes to bring forward now? Yes, Peter.
Okay, our year end is July 31st, so at the barbecue, I'll be there to take a strip of your cash check. Or if you want to send a e-transfer, it's Brampton Probus, one word, @gmail.com. It's $50. And Mike and John, who paid for the euchre by email, I will refund you by email. Okay, e-transfer makes it easier for me to, okay. So I'll be there to take your cash check, or we can do it now if you want to send e-transfer, Brampton Probus @gmail.com. These are dues that our year ends the end of July, so. Yeah. Okay. Membership fees, dues, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, we're just starting to think about that with the new year around the corner here for us at Probus. So you see, Peter takes and he gives back too, right? Refunding for the euchre tournament. Okay, if there's no other, are you okay, Bruce? No other new business? Consider it adjourned. The next meeting is July the 2nd, barbecue, and get that money in so we can all enjoy a lovely day at the Legion. Have a good month.